most gruesome of it all is what happened in the first few days, where a man removed the eyes of his daughter because allegedly the daughter didn't listen to his advice, and it really shocked the international community, not just South Sudanese community. And we need to have a look at our culture in general, because many people that I see trying to defend some of the actions that are happening are always citing culture, culture, culture. And if anything we've learned in the world is that culture is very dynamic and it changes. Culture is people. There's no culture in isolation. It has to be with people, and it demands and changes that are happening around us are happening. We have to keep up with those changes. And right now, so in South Sudan, women, they are over half of the population of South Sudan, and by placing these demands on them, we are actually pricing out over half of our population from participating in economic activities that could actually drive our country forward. So it's really an unfortunate case.
It is very unfortunate, Alfred, and thank you for taking us through that journey. It's really been a disturbing event, and this is really, many people know that this is just a tip of iceberg. There are deep cases that are not reported or that don't feature on social media that people like us can see. In the past 3 years, it's been news of either the girl has been beaten to death by brothers or the father, or the girl ran away and committed suicide, or the girl being like cut off, like chopped ears off or something, like some unreasonable thing. I think the next thing could be like the teeth being removed, or what is really beyond removing eyes. It's something that I don't know. Maybe we have seen that. We have seen ears chop off, the eyes now chop off. What next? It's the vagina will be cut off or something of that sort in our community. I don't know. Like how can we educate our people to really see this bright wealth from a healthy perspective, not as destructive as it is happening now?
That's a good question. Obviously, I'm not an expert on issues like this pertaining to gender-based violence in the country, but we can have educated discussions on what is happening really. In my opinion, there's a lot of factors that contribute to this rise in gender-based violence targeting women in disproportionate amounts. And South Sudan economy has been tanking over the last 10 years since the inception of the country. A lot of people do not have stable jobs. South Sudan currency is depreciating at an alarming rate, and it's not keeping up with the inflation in the country. And there are not stable economic activities going on because of the insecurity situation in the country. People are not rearing their animals in peace. They're not doing agricultural activities in peace. And many of these people are actually being displaced by either conflicts or natural calamities such as floods and droughts and famine. And so people are really looking for ways to survive. And it looks like one of the low-hanging fruits that they're seeing is the girls, because historically South Sudanese have placed a lot of wealth, bright wealth, as central to the cultural practices. So because of economic activities happening and life is getting harder, they are essentially commercializing this activity, and it's leading to more conflicts, and we're going to see more conflicts. And as you say, it's really a tip of the iceberg what is happening. It's only under the glare of camera that we get really worked up about it. But there are millions of South Sudanese women living in remote corners of the country that nobody knows what happened there. And until we get down to the basics, educating our population, giving them minimum basic education up to high school, making sure that youth get jobs when they graduate out of our colleges.
But do you think, because the people whose ears are being chopped off or whose eyes are being removed, they are really young young girls, like teenagers. So really, do you think like finding job opportunities for big people that are finishing high school or universities, will it start with the grassroots where these things are happening? Or I really don't understand. Why is it so?
It's a good question that I say, and it's a very complex one. It cannot be. There's not a simple yes or no answer, or there's not a simple just add water solution to this problem, because it's really far-reaching. It has economic elements, it has political elements, it has social elements, and cultural elements to it as well. And that is what complicates it even more. What I believe is, in general, societies that have high number of have high literacy rates tend to have fewer issues related to gender-based issues, such as depending on women for economic enrichment because of the dowry that they fetch. Right now, according to latest statistics, I think South Sudan is about under 40% of the population is actually literate, can read and write. So the majority are living in remote areas with no access to education, with no access to social amenities. There are no roads that are innovating the country, and young people that are coming to schools are actually selling cows and their animals to attend schools. And where do these cows come from? They come from bride wealth in most cases, not all. So some of these young people, even though they go to school, when they revert back to their villages during the holidays, what do they practice? They either do cattle raiding, or they find ways to make sure that the women that are in their circles get married properly. And when somebody comes in and try to get in a relationship that they do not sanction, they are going to go fight those people, and then it spirals out of control. So it's really, there's a lot that is underneath it, and that is what we as a society need to look at.
You're suggesting this is a policy issue. So
absolutely,
it's a policy. But how about this, tendency to really, hide under the culture, some women actually pride themselves for being married, with a lot of cows, and it's something that community enjoys. It's like, how do you separate the economic hardship, lack of education and literacy, from this cultural pride attached to it? And how do you distinguish those two, and how do you see them playing out, in the end?
Yeah, those are insightful questions. In general, I could not be more equivocal that education and security as a country is a prerequisite to overcoming some of these issues that we have. These cultural perceptions that certain women have placed on themselves come as a demand, because the men have convinced them that
the men have really convinced them.
they've convinced them that being married at a certain price is associated with certain kind of royalty to the family that you bring, or some form of benefit that comes to the family. But it's really like a mirage, because at the end of the day, I think most women are giving up the agency to speak up on some of these issues, because they've been involved in part or in whole in some of these practices, and it will take a while for us to actually, as a society, to see that this is a practice that needs revision. If we keep on doing the same thing the same way, we are not going to get different results. We're going to expect the same results.
Absolutely, it's the same results, and it looked like we have a long way to go, because we get to do election in the coming year for these policies on economic decisions, or national decision to change the society fabric to come to effect. But if you have a last word that you can tell that young girl whose eyes were removed, what would that be? And if you were to speak to their father, he had the privilege, what would you tell them?
Yeah, it's a really unfortunate situation, and there is no excuse whatsoever that alleged father has to give in order to justify the gruesome action that he did on his daughter. because she's very young. She's still in the teenage years, and we know what teenagers do. We've all been there before. We can be rookie and we can be hot-headed, and we want to be independent. And sometimes we will curtail those independence from ourselves. Then we don't develop into fully functional human beings when we grow up. So I am advocating for the punishment, a proper punishment legally to this father, to make sure, first of all, to set an example that things like this are not acceptable in modern day South Sudan. He has caused almost permanent disability to the kid, and she's not going to be as competitive as she should be without those two eyes. We need our senses, all of us, to be able to be fully functional human beings. But again, disability is not inability.